What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine.com. I am your host, EJ Holland. We're going to be answering all of your questions on tonight's show. I see a lot of you guys were in here bright and early, so appreciate you guys. Before we start tonight's show, though, we do have a message from our sponsor, and that is the Wolverine magazine. So if you guys don't know, the Wolverine.com also publishes a magazine. We had a special commemorative edition of the Wolverine magazine come out here recently. It reflects on Michigan's 2023 season and the 2024 playoff run leading up to the national championship victory over Washington. This special commemorative edition is written by the staff of the Wolverine. It comes in two different versions. One is the magazine version, which is 148 full color glossy pages, and the other is the book version, which is 144 ad-free premium glossy pages, and that is a hardback actual book. It's great for putting on a coffee table. So both versions have a ton of great content. They include in-depth features on Blake Corum, JJ McCarthy, and others, exclusive highlights on the dynamic defensive line and path to the championship, comprehensive game-by-game coverage, stunning photography, insightful column stats, and much more. It's a great gift idea as well. And it's just great for Michigan fans to have, so you can, keep around, like I said, keep around the coffee table, keep them around for when you want to look back, 20 years from now. It'll be a really neat thing to have around. So make sure to get your special edition of the Wolverine magazine commemorative edition, and also subscribe to the Wolverine.com today for just $1 for 1 month. It's a great time to subscribe with the transfer portal opening up, the spring evaluation period opening up as well. So coaches will be on the road soon. And then on top of that, it's the spring game weekend, so a ton of visitors coming through Ann Arbor this week. All right, let's get into your questions. And also, guys, remember to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. We have 28,300 subscribers. Like this video if you want Michigan to get a commitment or 3 this weekend. We have 28,300 subscribers. We're trying to get to 30K. It helps, fill up the chat box so we can have more interaction. Obviously, it helps us as well. And if you want to skip the line tonight, make sure to leave a super chat. It's that little box with the dollar symbol that bumps you up to the front of the line. And like I said, we already have a ton of questions. And so just to get this out of the way, we did have some technical issues earlier. YouTube did this weird thing where it deleted comments that were in here early. So instead of answering the questions the way they are in the chat box chronologically, I know John A. Scholl was here first, and there was somebody else that was in here first, but I don't really remember who that was. So apologies to that person. I don't think they've re-entered the chat box, but if you want to put your question in the chat box, I'll definitely get to you. But I know John was here first with a couple of questions. So let's get to his first one. And he says, EJ, who are the best defensive line recruits you've ever covered? Is Mason Graham at the top or near the top? The best defensive line recruits I've ever covered. The first defensive line recruit that I ever saw that I was like, man, this guy is just way better than everybody else on the field was Ed Oliver, who was a 5-star prospect out of Houston. And that was like early on in the Texas beat. And I think it was like my first or second year, and I was transitioning from the SMU beat, where I was basically covering like 2 stars and 3 stars. So I remember seeing Ed Oliver and being like, oh my God. And, obviously Ed Oliver was, a high pick. In terms of guys that, Michigan has recruited, obviously Mason Graham is definitely up there. Kenneth Grant. I actually had Kenneth Grant ranked higher than Mason Graham. I have both ranked as top 100 level guys. Obviously, everybody always points to that. So I was all aboard the Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant bandwagon. When I went to go see Kenny G for the first time, it was kind of crazy to think that he was a 3-star. I remember like banging the drum nonstop that Kenneth Grant should be this like highly ranked, highly pursued recruit. It was just crazy to me that he was a 3-star when he was that size, moving the way he did. I mean, it was kind of an anomaly. So, Kenneth Grant was by far my favorite defensive lineman that I've ever covered. He is up there as one of the best recruits I've ever covered all time in terms of, ability on the field, but as well as personality. If I could cover, the cool thing about recruiting is that you get to cover new kids every cycle, right? So it's always new guys, you're forming relationships and stuff. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of the job, but there's some certain kids you wish you could cover for more than a year or two. And Kenneth Grant is definitely one of those guys. And then, Mason Graham, I didn't get to know as much. I did go out to see him in California when Servite played Mater Dei, and he had a really, really good game. And, I think that, Mason has obviously exceeded even my ranking. I had him in the top 100, but, I think he's obviously played like a 5-star. And I think he's proved a lot of people wrong. And so I'm happy for both Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. Let's see. Let's go back to the top, and let's go with Nate the Great. And he says, EJ, considering how thin the wide receiver room is currently, and with Ron Bellamy positioning us nicely with guys like Quincy Porter and Taz Williams, are there any other receivers you'd see Michigan taking? Yeah, you have to keep in mind that Michigan only took 2 wide receivers last cycle, and both were more slot type guys, and Channing Goodwin and Marion Stewart. So, I would see them taking more than 2 this cycle if they are able to land Quincy Porter and Taz Williams, 2 guys that are tier 1 on the wide receiver board right now. That would obviously be an amazing haul, but I think there would be some more names that Michigan would still like. One, being Andrew Marsh, who is another top 100 recruit, like a Quincy Porter. He's an elite level guy. Marsh has been on campus a couple of times out of the Houston area in Texas. With Marsh, I think his recruitment is going to be tough to win. You see here, he's the number 55 player overall. Texas, the slight leader on the on3 recruiting prediction machine. That's probably where I'd lean as well, though, A&M always recruits well in that Katy area. And I believe his sister goes to A&M. I know he has a family member at A&M, but I think pulling him out of the Lone Star State would be tough. But he's also at the very, very top of the board. So they would love to get Andrew Marsh back on campus for an official visit in June. And a guy coming in this weekend, Quincy Porter obviously is a big-bodied wide receiver, and landing him would be great, but I don't think they would pass up on another big-bodied wide receiver that is also in the top 100, and that is Derek Meadows out of Las Vegas Bishop Gorman. So same school that produced Micah Kaapana last cycle. Meadows is getting ready to make his first ever visit to Michigan this weekend. He has some Midwest ties. He's originally from the Chicagoland area. He knows Marion Stewart, so that'll help. And that's a big reason why Notre Dame is such a heavy leader in his recruitment. And I would definitely give the Irish the edge there. But maybe Michigan can make something shake this weekend. You're talking about big-bodied guys. He is definitely one at 6'5", 185 pounds. So, if we're talking other guys that are really high on the board, Derek Meadows and Andrew Marsh would be guys that they would take. And another guy that, isn't ranked as high, that's also coming in this weekend that Michigan really values is Philip Wright out of Louisiana. He's only a 3-star recruit. We haven't talked about him very much. We haven't talked to him very much since he doesn't do a ton of interviews or anything like that. But Philip Wright is a kid that Ron Bellamy went down and saw during the during the winter contact period. Baylor has the lead on the On3 recruiting prediction machine, but I think Michigan has a chance to make a real move this weekend. And, with Philip Wright, he's a track kid. I believe he runs in the 10.5. So definitely has some legitimate game-changing speed that I think would complement those two guys really well. When you're talking about Quincy Porter, you're talking about a true big-bodied outside wide receiver. When you're talking about Taz Williams, you're talking about a guy that is just a really consistent pass catcher that you can line up in the slot or, in the backfield. He's kind of a Samaj Morgan, a Marion Stewart type. With Philip Wright, he's a true burner, and, Michigan really needs that on the roster as well, especially after missing out on Gatlin Bear last cycle. Nate the Great back with another question. He says, with running back recruiting, it seems like Marquise Davis and Iverson Howard are the favorites if we have a multi-back class. Are we still in it with Jordan Davison, or has OSU pulled this one away? Yeah, Iverson Howard, it's going to be an interesting weekend with him on campus. He's not a guy that Tony Alford really recruited, so I'm interested to see if he makes a push for him. I know he's a guy that Chiron Moore has personally liked. Marquise Davis, obviously a take all the way. But with Iverson Howard, you see him trending to Michigan on the On3 recruiting prediction machine. He was the top guy on the board for former position coach Mike Hart. But still kind of a wait and see thing with him. Marquise Davis, like I said, a take all the way. He's obviously a big top option. Jordan Davison, I don't really see it happening. I think that one's pretty much sailed away. Two other backs to really know here in the 25 class. One is Bo Jackson, who's also out of Ohio, just named Michigan in his top 12, but I think he'll be a tough pull. And another tough pull will be Byron Lewis out of Florida. Michigan working to get him on campus. But those are the, top guys right now. We'll see if Tony Alford expands the board here during the spring evaluation period. Tyson Smith says, will we land Gash? So 4-star offensive lineman Avery Gash is expected to be back for the spring game this weekend, as our VP of recruiting, Steve Wiltfong, first reported. And, if Gash does make it in this weekend for the spring game as expected, then Michigan has a chance to close sooner than expected. Gash has stated on numerous occasions that he plans to take his recruitment into the summer. He's been very adamant about that timeline. However, Michigan has pushed extremely hard. He's been on campus twice this offseason. This would be his third visit of the spring. So, again, Michigan has a chance to make a real move. I wouldn't be surprised if they close sooner than expected. I mean, Michigan's done everything right in this recruitment. He loves the offensive line production. He has great relationships with Sherrone Moore and Grant Newsome. He's bonded well with guys on the team and commits. Carter Smith is helping out in this recruitment, Michigan's quarterback commit. So, yeah, I mean, all signs point to Michigan here. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if this one happens sooner than expected. So, will Michigan land Gatch? I would definitely say yes right now. Let's go down to Tyson Smith, who says, will we land Dwayne Galloway? So Dwayne Galloway, on 300 cornerback out of Ohio. He has been trending to Michigan recently. And unlike Avery Gatch, I do not have a prediction in for Galloway. I forgot to mention with Gatch, I've had a prediction in since November and still feel really good about that one. Now, there have been some predictions elsewhere for Galloway. There's been some buzz that he could shut down his recruitment this weekend, but I'm not expecting it personally. I think that Michigan wants to get to know him. I think he has to get to know the staff. He has some summer official visits already lined up. So, you can't rule out anything in recruiting. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, he's definitely not committing, but I'm not expecting it. I think there has to be a get to know you type of process here with Galloway and the staff. So, to answer the question, will Michigan land Dwayne Galloway? I think it's TBD. We'll see, if they make him a top priority. And look, I mean, obviously he's ranked extremely high, but the rankings don't always paint a clear picture. We talk about guys like, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham that weren't ranked as high, and, Michigan had them ranked higher than a lot of prospects that were, high 4 stars and things of that nature. Or, there are guys that I covered at Texas. I remember Texas had a secondary haul in 2018, where they landed like 4 top 150 guys, and only one of them really panned out. Everybody else was not good. So, Michigan likes to make its own evaluations, and just because they need momentum right now doesn't mean they should take someone if they're not comfortable yet. So I think right now it's still kind of a wait and see process. Tyson Smith says, will we land Alex Graham? No. I put in a prediction for Colorado to land Alex Graham, who's a 4-star defensive back out of IMG Academy. I know Colorado wasn't on his little graphic that he released, but we've seen recruits play games in the past, including Michigan's very own Jair Hill. So I wouldn't put too much stock into it. There's a reason that I put in a prediction for Colorado. There's a reason that Steve Wilfong put in a prediction for Colorado. So yeah, not too optimistic there. So I'm going to say no. Tyson Smith says, OT question, Devin Haney or Ryan Garcia. So big fight this weekend. Definitely going with Devin Haney. I would bet unanimous decision there. Haney's like one of the best in the game right now, technically sound. The jab's great. And Ryan Garcia is like all over the place right now mentally. So, and plus, yeah, I know I'm Mexican, so is Ryan Garcia, but we don't really claim him. So I'm going with Devin Haney. Let's go down to Nate the Great. And he says, favorite college football game I've ever seen. That's kind of a tough one because I don't get to watch a lot of college football. I'm always at high school games. So I guess, when I was a kid, my favorite one was probably the Boise State, Oklahoma game, which was like the Fiesta Bowl, I guess, where Ian Johnson took that Statue of Liberty play to win the game. So that was probably my favorite game, just because it was the most memorable game that I can think of, off the top of my head. As far as Michigan games, my favorite game was probably just the Rose Bowl this past year, seeing those guys get over the hurdle, especially cheering for guys like, JJ McCarthy and Will and all the guys that I've covered that I really built strong relationships with. It was great to see them get over the hump and take down the Tide. So, those would be the games that would come to mind. Jeff M says, how good is Savion Hyder? Would he be the top ranked running back if he were in the 2025 class? So yeah, Savion Hyder, the nation's #1 running back in the 2026 recruiting class, is set to make a visit to Michigan tomorrow, as we first reported over on the Wolverine like weeks ago, and people acted like it was breaking news. But if you watched the show, you should have known that Hyder was coming in already. Hyder is phenomenal, man. He's a guy that has elite level elusiveness in the open field. He's an all-purpose back, meaning he can catch the ball out of the backfield. You can line him up in the slot or out wide. There's so much you can do with him. The quickness is there. He doesn't necessarily have like this amazing straight line speed, but he's working with a speed coach and it's getting faster and faster. Really good build. He's listed at 5'11", 190. He's added a few more pounds. I think he's at 195 right now. So that's pretty legit. I saw him recently, and like I said, he has a good compact build. He kind of looks like a Michigan running back. So yeah, I mean, he's a stud. I would say he would be in contention for the #1 ranked running back in 2025. I know Harlan Berry is obviously very high up there, but I think you would put him in the same category as an Akil and Deer. So yeah, I would say he'd have an argument, but he is very good. He's, one of the top backs for Tony Alford and Michigan next cycle, and the Wolverines will have a chance to make a real move this week on his visit. It'll be his first time seeing Michigan. But that relationship with Tony Alford dates back to Alford's time at Ohio State. And on top of that, Hyder obviously will probably command some NIL dollars just being at a premium position and being ranked so high. But, he's a really good student in the classroom. He goes to arguably the best private school in the state of Virginia at Woodbury Forest School, where they take academics, extremely seriously. So, he's a guy that really values what Michigan can offer on and off the field. So we'll see how this week goes. John A. Schultz says, EJ, will Michigan start offering offensive linemen further down their board like the Utah offensive linemen Tapu and Akaula if they don't start getting commits from their top targets? Or those guys takes? They're not takes. Obviously, they don't have offers, but, I don't think that Michigan's going to really start moving on other offensive linemen right now. I think there are still various, viable options on the board. Avery Gash, we just mentioned, could shut down things sooner than expected. Obviously, they're making guys like Michael Carroll and Douglas Utu big priorities. Hardy Watts is a guy that I could easily see in the class. Obviously, they want a true tackle, and Jack Lange is one that I think is super high on the board. Andrew Babalola is going to be a bit of a tough pool as a 5-star, but he's a guy that's still very high on Michigan. Actually, I spoke to our national analyst, Chad Simmons, earlier today, who was out in Kansas, and he told me that Babalola had some really great things to say about Michigan coming off his unofficial visit a few weeks ago. So, there are plenty of targets on the offensive line board, and there are guys that have dropped a little bit on the board, but again, are still viable options. Rowan Byrne is a 3-star prospect out of New York that's visited Michigan on several occasions. So, yeah, I don't think there's any real reason for Michigan to start moving with other offensive linemen right now. They're in the mix with plenty. And plus, it won't be as big of a class as you think. They might only take 3 or 4. So, it is what it is. Let's go down to John A. Schultz again. He says, EJ, Alex Graham has set a commitment date. Should UM fans be worried, excited, or both? Personally, I'm absolutely terrified given how recruiting is going. We talked about Alex Graham earlier. I think Colorado is the likely pick there. John A. Schultz says, who's my favorite boxer of all time and why? Probably Eric Morales. Just, like I said, I'm Mexican, and he had the Mexican style and was in a lot of entertaining fights. So he would probably be my favorite boxer of all time. Let's go down to John A. Schultz, and he says, he said the same thing. What's my favorite weight class to watch as well? My favorite weight class to watch is probably right now. I mean, back in the day would be welterweight. Right now would be the lightweight, super lightweight divisions have a ton of talent. So yeah, definitely would go there. Everybody from Tank Davis to Shakur Stevenson to Devin Haney, Teofimo Lopez, a lot of exciting fighters in those two divisions. Let's go to John A. Schultz has another one. What UM recruit from the past few years would make the best boxer? Okay, a lot of boxing questions. Yeah, I would say that you'd have to pick someone that's kind of on the smaller side. Like, Junior Colson, I guess, is built like a boxer, right? But he's too big, or he's too short, and he would be in the heavyweight division, so it would not work out well. That's a tough question. Maybe like an offensive tackle then, if we're just going to straight up throw someone in the heavyweight division. Someone that I really liked that I actually wrote looked like a boxer was Tristan Bounds. I know he hasn't gotten on the field very much, but he was a legitimate 6'7", 6'8". So he had like that Tyson Fury height, and then he had like a really athletic build. I'm curious to see how Tristan Bounds does. I wrote when I saw him that he had a ton of upside, and I really liked that frame and that height. So we'll see, if it pans out on the football field. Let's go down to Ralph Melvin. He says, you think receivers in the protocol are interested in Michigan, even though we don't have an experienced throwing quarterback? Yeah, I mean, I think with the receivers coming in, they want to see who the quarterbacks are coming in with them. So I think it's important for Carter Smith to really build relationships with a lot of these wide receiver targets. Smith's reached out to Quincy Porter and Taz Williams. But, from an overall perspective, I think they're more curious to see how the offense just looks in general under Kurt Campbell. Will they throw the ball a little bit more? Will they push the ball downfield a little bit more? Alex Orji, isn't the most polished passer, but he certainly has a big arm, so he is capable of pushing the ball down the field. One of Michigan's main wide receiver targets, like I mentioned, is Taz Williams, and Taz actually played against Alex Orji in high school. Both are from the Dallas area, and Taz told me some great things about Alex, and they got to hang out on the visit and things of that nature. But I think guys just want to kind of see what the offense looks like now that Sherrone Moore is the head coach and Kurt Campbell is the OC. Ava Dedi Vanaj says, EJ, any way we flip Bryce Underwood? I would say no. I don't think Michigan can flip Bryce Underwood unless, they have some big NIL coming. But LSU, I think, has locked him in and did a great job with their NIL. So, Michigan's pretty happy with Carter Smith. So I think that's not going to happen anytime soon. Desmond Payne or ever. Desmond Payne says, hail to everyone in the chat. Go Blue. Who is a quality quarterback transfer portal available that Michigan can go after? I'm not sure. Obviously the portal is opening up and there's going to be some options that I'm sure will pop up. We haven't heard of any movement in regards to quarterbacks. So, it's kind of a wait and see. The team guys mostly handle the portal. So, I don't have any names, unfortunately, Desmond. Chaotic 37 says, EJ, we have been used to Harbaugh offseason drama the last few years. How soon do you think Chiron Moore will be able to achieve recruiting success early in the offseason, year 1, 2, or later? Well, this is year 1, and obviously you had a bunch of offseason drama. So it would have to be next year. I think, if he's able to keep the majority of this staff intact and if he's able to have success on the field, then you would avoid the regular offseason drama, which has obviously hindered Michigan. But I think in order for the Wolverines to really capitalize on early starts, they have to get an NIL plan in place. I know we said that, a ton over the last several, years at this point. But yeah, I don't know, man. I think the NIL thing's the biggest aspect, but in terms of, actual stability, I don't think Chiron Moore is going anywhere for a while. So yeah, I think that next year's offseason we'll have a chance to finally have, a regular few months as opposed to the will he stay, will he not stay that we experienced with Jim Harbaugh. Blyberg says, any chance of flipping Will Black? So Will Black's rated as a 5-star on On3, currently committed to Notre Dame. I haven't heard of anything in regards to Michigan potentially flipping Will Black. So I'm going to say no. Obviously he did visit Michigan and was considered a Michigan lean at one time, but it seems like he's pretty set on going to Notre Dame. So probably not, maybe later in the cycle if, Notre Dame struggles and Michigan's winning consistently or something like that. But, as things stand today, not real movement there. Abba Dedivanaj, I'm butchering that name. Can we pull up DJ Picket? I'm going to say no again. 5-star DB DJ Picket out of Florida was once a top target for Michigan. Obviously, he's a guy with a ton of ties to the university. His mom went to Michigan. At one point it looked like Michigan was really high on the list, but you look at the schools involved here, LSU, Miami, Georgia, Oregon, that's usually not a good recipe for Michigan. And he hasn't, really connected with the new secondary coach, Lamar Morgan. Not Morgan's fault. Morgan's definitely reached out and tried to put in some effort, but it doesn't seem like Pickett is very interested anymore. And Blyberg says, how is EJ Holland a Mexican name? Yeah, so I get that a lot. So my first name's actually Enrique, and that has been passed down for like ever. So it's my dad's name, and it was his uncle's name, and it was that uncle's dad's name, and it's been passed down forever. And then Holland was just it's really weird. I have one ancestor that came on the Mayflower supply ship and went down to Texas in the early 1800s and then just married a Mexican woman, and then everybody else in my family is Mexican. So yeah, that's the lone Anglo-Saxon relative that I have. That's why I'm brown. But anyway, yeah, my mom's last name's Gomez. All of her family is descended from Mexico, and yeah, my dad's brown as me, darker than me. So yeah, no, that's where it comes from. Roman Wilson said, EJ, give me some good Michigan news. We need it after these last couple of days. Yeah, let's start off with good news. Okay, so I was going to troll you guys, but I'm not. Some good news is Carter Smith had a great performance at the Elite 11, even though he didn't get the invite. I thought that, he was the best 2025 quarterback there, and he's definitely improving a lot as a passer. So that's definitely a positive thing. I'm just trying to go position by position. I wasn't trying to be that funny, but Marquise Davis, trending up for Michigan, getting him back on campus here recently was really, really big in his recruitment. I think right now, Michigan is top 2 for both Quincy Porter and Taz Williams. So obviously a big positive. I think that Michigan is top 2 for top tight end target Andrew Olesh. I think Michigan's on the cusp of getting a commitment from Avery Gash if he makes it back to campus this weekend. I think Brian Jean Mary has Michigan in a really good spot with Elijah Melendez. Obviously it's going to be tough to flip a kid from Miami given NIL. But I think that Michigan, if a school can flip Melendez from Miami, I think it would be Michigan. Michigan probably has the lead for Chase Taylor. He's a 3-star linebacker, but I think that the staff values him more than that. Kanoa Winston just set an OV. He's a top 100 defensive back after making an unofficial over the weekend. And, I think Michigan's top 3 for Jadon Blair, who's another top 100 DB. Michigan hosted the number 1 safety in the country on Monday in Jordan Young. So those are some positive tidbits. And also they hosted the 2 of the most elite long snappers in the country this week. So, can't forget about special teams. Ava says, is there any 5 stars we are hosting this weekend? 5 stars? No 5 stars except for Savion Hyder, who's a 2026. And I don't think he's a 5-star, even though he would qualify because he's a top 20 recruit. But Hyder's in tomorrow. But as far as 2025s, no 5 stars. Desmond Payne says, EJ, do you think Donovan Edwards will have a statement year following Blake's senior season success? Definitely hope so, man. Obviously Donovan was one of my favorite recruits. Really interested to see what he does now that Blake Corum's not on the roster. Donovan was obviously the bell cow at West Bloomfield and was, the star of the show. And I think, anytime he gets that opportunity, he makes big plays. So, you saw it in the championship game. Obviously, I think that Donovan's going to take that opportunity and run with it. So I'm definitely cheering for him. And it looks like Abba's back with one last comment / question. So we have gone over time, guys. So if you're going to try to sneak in a question out, let's sneak it in now. And he says, Nate Marshall this weekend is going to be big. And yeah, I think that Michigan will have a chance to really cement itself as a true player in this recruitment. Marshall is already set to come back for an OV to Michigan that first weekend of June. With that said, Alabama and Miami are the 2 schools that have continued to trend for him, but he's definitely, very high on Michigan's edge board. I know he's listed as a defensive lineman, but Michigan recruiting him as more of a bigger edge, and Lou Esposito already connecting well there. It looks like last question of the night will come from Courtney Harper, and it says, any big wide receivers we're in on? So obviously Quincy Porter is the guy, top 100 wide receiver out of New Jersey. I think Michigan's right up there with Ohio State, Penn State, also in the mix for him. Derek Meadows, another top 100 wide receiver out of Las Vegas Bishop Foreman, will be on campus this weekend. Notre Dame's considered the heavy favorite there, so we'll see, how things shake with him. And Jacob Washington from Louisiana just visited recently. He's another guy to know. And Desmond Payne, I guess, is the last question. Who do you got for the Maize and Blue game? I don't even remember which one's which, but whichever team has Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, because they're on the same team, right? Like whoever has Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, that's the team I'm going with. All right. Appreciate you guys for joining me. Our Zach Libby will be out in the spring game, getting photos of all the recruits, and he'll have some recruiting scoop. I'll have some recruiting scoop. So we'll have a ton of stuff over at the Wolverine. Our team staff will be on site covering the game. So they'll have a ton of team related stuff over at thewolverine.com. So make sure to subscribe for $1 for 1 month, and also like this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel for free. We'll be back next week.